Before I get started today, I would first like to acknowledge all the elders in the room and ask for their forgiveness for speaking before them. Haumitakiapi, Liliana Tamayo, Imachiapi, Naha Yuha Chate Washte Nape Chuzapi. Greetings, my relatives. My English name is Liliana Tamayo. I shake all of your hands with a warm heart today. I am an enrolled member of the Sichongo Lakota tribe in Rosebud, South Dakota. I am also enrolled in my junior year of college, majoring in sociology and minoring in Native American studies. Around this time last year, too fast. Around this time last year, there was a little bit of an uprising on the Standing Rock Reservation in North Dakota. This uprising was due to the Dakota Access Pipeline. For those of you who do not know much about the pipeline, it transports crude oil through 4 states: North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Illinois. This pipeline was also set to be built underneath the Missouri River, which not only endangers a huge source of water for these 4 states, but the only source of water for the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. The tribe also took the position that this construction would disrupt sacred and ceremonial sites that were important to them. When construction firms first started building the Dakota Access Pipeline around the reservation, a small handful of youth realized what was going on. They became concerned about the impact to their environment, their tribal lands, and the supply of water along the Missouri River. They wanted to do something to bring awareness to the potential impact. So they ran 2,000 miles from the Standing Rock Reservation to Washington, D.C., educating people all along their journey. This run triggered tons of press coverage and interest, not only in Indian country, but around the world. As a result of this action, tribes from all across America, many who have never worked together before, flocked to the Standing Rock Reservation to show their support for the youth action. They went to show their commitment to the cause and to attempt to halt the pipeline's construction. The small group of Standing Rock became a call to action for Indigenous peoples around the world. Those who went to Standing Rock didn't consider themselves protesters, but rather water protectors. You may have heard their phrase that became their call to action, Mini Wichoni, which means water is life. About 6 months after the water protectors started camping there, along with some of my friends, I decided to go to the Standing Rock Reservation to stand with the thousands of people that were already there living in tents, teepees, and trailers. There were 3 camps that were started: the Sacred Stone Camp, the Rosebud Camp, and the Ocheti Shakowin Camp. The largest of these 3 was the Ocheti Shakowin Camp, which means the 7 council fires in the Lakota language. Before we got there, I honestly didn't know what to expect. Driving into the camp, we drove down this dirt road with dozens of tribal flags. Flags I was not familiar with. I saw my own flag, and I saw many that I did know about. It was an overwhelming sight to see. When we looked for a place for our campsite, we found an open area near a tribe that I have grown up around most of my life, the Oglala tribe, located on the Pine Ridge Reservation. We had gotten there close to sundown, so we still had enough time to set up our little camp and take in all of our little surroundings. When I woke up the next day, I realized just how much diversity was there within everybody that was there. I saw the Indigenous people taking on traditional roles, becoming warriors and caretakers. I saw elders perched around the circle drinking wakaleapi, which is the Lakota word for coffee. It was a feeling I had not felt in a really long time. I felt like I was home. I knew a good handful of people that were already at the camp, and they told me about it and their experiences and their time there. But I wasn't able to fully understand their words until I myself was in that position. On the third day, there was a plan rising to go to Bismarck and block off one of the major highways for a couple of hours to bring awareness of our mission to the people of Bismarck. I went with a group of friends, and before we knew it, we were all caught in the middle of it. The first and the last cars were the ones who blocked off the road so that we could take it over. Before we start praying, we do this thing called smudging, which is burning sage and directing the smoke around our bodies to cleanse ourselves. So when we blocked off the bridge, everybody started to get out of their cars and smudge themselves, and some started to sing and march. Eventually, the police officers, dressed in their best riot gear, stopped us and surrounded us like a herd of cattle. When we stopped, there were 3 women at the front who were kneeling and smudging themselves and singing and praying. At the time, I saw how strong these women were. These random women who I will never know were strong enough and fierce enough to face danger head on and knew that they would be okay because they were standing their ground for something that they believed in. While I was watching them, I touched my face and I realized that I was crying. I was so proud of these women. I was so proud of how strong they were. Soon enough, the police officers decided to shut us down and started to arrest people who wouldn't go back to the camps. So because of those arrests that day, we all headed to the courthouse. After arriving at the courthouse, all I remember was feeling sympathy. I felt sorry for these police officers who didn't understand our mission. I felt sorry for the police officers who didn't understand how important Grandmother Earth was to us. I got sad when none of them would make eye contact with me or my friends. I wondered what they were thinking. Were they judging us? Did they truly understand what this all meant to us? Later that night, I attended a women's ceremony, and there I prayed for these officers. I prayed for their families. I prayed that they would never have to fight the same battles that we face every day. During my time in that ceremony, I shared parts of my heart that I have never done before. I spoke about the hardships and the troubles that I was going through at the time. I went into ceremony to pray for these officers, and by the end of it, I had found healing and guidance within myself. By the end of my time there, I had realized many things, but the one thing that really stuck out to me was how whole I felt. Being a part of the majority made me feel like I belonged somewhere again. This wasn't just one tribe's battle anymore. It was all of ours. Since the camps have been shut down, there have been so many more movements and marches for Indigenous people and our rights than I have ever experienced. According to the U.S. Census in 2015, Indigenous people made up less than 2% of America's population. So for us, media representation is almost non-existent. The media representation that we do get are mascots, Halloween costumes, fictional characters like Pocahontas. So whenever I'm the first Indigenous person somebody meets, I still get those questions about whether we hunt buffalo and live in teepees and ride horses, which is obviously ridiculous. But it puts into perspective to me that we as a people are taught as though we are a pastime, which is why the Indigenous Rising movements are so important. I think that we as a people have been itching to get noticed in some way and somehow, in a very twisted and ironic way. The Dakota Access Pipeline actually gave us a chance to reclaim our voices. It made us realize that there was another injustice being done to our relatives, and we weren't going to sit around and let it happen. Since then, many Indigenous folks are making people hear their voices. The events at Standing Rock were a turning point for Indigenous communities, which led to all of us to become more active in advocating for our rights. This shared effort has swept through our communities like never before, and we are starting to rebuild ourselves. There have been similar movements to protest corporate actions in Alberta, Canada, Wisconsin, New York, and New Jersey, just to name a few. These movements and marches are allowing younger generations to see that we don't have to live in the shadows anymore. We are products of the most resilient group in America. We have been silenced for over 500 years, and we will not be silenced any longer. Indigenous representatives from many different tribes have come together to bring light to our cultures and our spirituality and the importance of Unchimaka into the mainstream press. But there's still so much more work that needs to be done. I'm not saying that over the past year we have perfected our communities and our livelihood, but we have started. Many folks who are still on reservations still deal with the aftermath of the historical trauma that our parents and our grandparents experienced. We just want people to understand where we're coming from. We've had to deal with the pain of being able to see the boarding schools that our grandmothers, that our grandfathers were tortured in just decades ago. We are the ones who have to deal with the intergenerational trauma that colonizers left for us. So with all this being said, I only have one request. Do not forget Americans as Indigenous people, and never underestimate their strength and endurance. Never forget the impact of the youth who ran 2,000 miles so that their voices and the voices of all Indigenous nations could be heard. My generation is the 7th generation. Many years ago, Black Elk, an Oglala tribal leader, had a vision that his people would lose heart from the ordeals that they were encountering, and that the sacred hoop of his nation would be broken. He envisioned that his people would suffer from sickness and wars. But he also saw hope for the future of his people. After 7 generations had passed, he believed there would be a reuniting of not only his own people, but of all peoples, creating this new sacred hoop. He saw a star rising in the east that would bring wisdom. These past 2 years, the 7th generation started to form this new sacred hoop. We are the ones who united so many tribal nations together. We are still here. And more than ever, we are committed to preserving Unchimaka for future generations. We are stronger and more unified than ever before. Thank you for opening up your hearts and listening to my words. Pilameye.